Hello, hello. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. As always, we appreciate your time. I am on day 2 of doing the podcast as a video also. So if you haven't checked us out, check us out on YouTube and Rumble. That's where I'm posting them. I was able to get those set up yesterday or the day before, and we're going to try to keep that going, at least for a little while, see how that takes. The more I can access people, the more people can access me. My hope is that this information that I provide can get out there and make a difference. That's really what I'm trying to do. So the topics of the year, that's where I was on the last podcast, and I'm going to continue down that path. Around here at Healthy Perspectives, we don't take on the easy things all the time. Sometimes we do. I like a good sports story. So I have, on occasion, done a little bit of a therapeutic take on, say, something like the World Cup or the Minnesota Vikings when they had the biggest comeback in NFL history. Shout out Vikings. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. Had a little dude moment for a second. The topics of the year, though, there's some really hard topics, and today is going to be no different than that. We are going to talk gender dysphoria. We are going to talk about gender identity. We are going to talk about what is a man, what is a woman, and that's a tough topic. At the end of the day, there are lots of opinions out there, and there is a reality. Whether we like it or don't like it, there is a reality. And my hope is to take a closer look at what is reality as opposed to what we want reality to be. Okay. So let's start off with this. Biology and gender are very different. Okay. If you were born with male anatomy, biologically, you are a male. You don't see a male cow and say, oh my gosh, that cow is a female. You don't see that if you look at a wolf. You don't see that if you look at a bear. The reality is, for biology, it's pretty cut and dry. Now, there are some anomalies that occur. So, for instance, this is going to, for those of you who don't want a little bit graphic, just fast forward 30 seconds or so. The reality is, at birth, the biology can tell you there's two things going on. Almost every time that you have a baby born, and it's very, very rare and unusual, but anytime you have a baby born with more than one genitalia, they almost always shed the penis. That's reality. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it. It is reality. Now, why do I tell you that? Because the natural state of people and of animals is to have a biological category. Now, we categorize them with words. I get that. But the biological category is done through the development of the person or the animal. And so we can't just ignore that reality. If you're born a male biologically, you're a male biologically. And it's not that you were assigned male, it's that you were created male. Okay. Taking that reality, set it aside, because there is another part of this reality we need to take a look at, and that is gender. Gender is on a spectrum, right? There are what we would classify as masculine or feminine men and masculine and feminine women. And there are some social constructs. Some of them are pliable and malleable and can be moved and shifted. So, for instance, for a very long time, you might have thought, if you were, in the industrial era, you might have thought, well, there's certain jobs for men and certain jobs for women. And that doesn't necessarily overlap. It's like, nope, that's a man's job. Nope, that's a woman's job. Now, I'm not saying that's right, because what we have learned is that there are many men who can do what was termed women's jobs, or women who can do what was termed men's jobs. And they can probably do them better. So it's kind of foolish at times to clarify, classify, and discriminate. And when I say discriminate, let me be clear. I know I've said this on other podcasts. I'm not talking about discriminating based on race and gender and all of that stuff. What I am talking about is that clarify, classify, and discriminate between. In other words, to be able to tell the difference between. And sometimes we clarify, classify, and discriminate only to find out that we've been doing it in a way that's not good and healthy. And that can happen when we start looking at the spectrum of masculine to feminine, and even at times what we call masculine and feminine. So let's start with the male for a moment. A masculine and a feminine man. What does that mean? Well, there's lots of social constructs that we look at when we're looking at what means masculine and what means feminine. Those constructs that are socially derived can shift over time. What can't shift over time is the biology. We can go through processes to attempt to change our biology, but it doesn't change the reality that we were born, made a certain way. Okay. So the spectrum. Now, are you less of a man if you are masculine, or are you less of a man if you are feminine? No. 100% unequivocally, no. If you are a feminine man, you are a man. If you are a masculine man, you are a man. There is a spectrum. Now, the beauty of this is the spectrum overlaps with the female spectrum. So what I'm going to attempt to do, I don't know if I can do this, but for those of you who are following me on Rumble or on YouTube, I am going to attempt to do a whiteboard and see if it comes up. And if it does, then I will jot you down a little, let's see, hopefully this is all recording and working right. So I am going to go ahead and add in here a line. All right, so you're going to have to hang on. I'm not much of an artist, but that doesn't mean I'm not good at a lot of things. Just art is not it. If this was our entire spectrum of masculine and feminine, the entire thing, the feminine side of the male spectrum is going to go between here and here. All right. So what I just drew was some lines. And for those of you who can't see it visually, what I'm doing is clarifying that this is the male spectrum. So we're just going to jot down M for male, and then F for female will be on the other side. All right. So hang on with me. What we're going to do is we're going to show that there is overlap between them. Now, this is actually a really cool concept. The idea that men and women overlap in the middle is really good for our world. It's good because it makes the experience of being a masculine or a feminine man, or the masculine or a feminine female, it makes that experience okay. Like, you can be comfortable as you are. You don't have to change to be somebody different. Now, some people are going to argue that, but I'm going to come back to that gender dysphoria piece of it. So that is essentially what I'm saying, is there's this overlapping space, this overlap that's in the middle. And here's the unfortunate reality. This space right here is where our media, is where our gender identity stuff is all coming into play. Well, we've got these feminine men and these masculine women. What do we do with that? Unfortunately, we're spending so much time on this one niche that we're missing the point. The point is, you're good enough exactly how you are. That's a reality check for some of you. I get it. You're like, oh no, I'm too fat. I'm too thin. I'm too tall. I'm too short. You were made that way. I didn't make you that way. Your parents got together, boom, boom, voila, you were made that way. And the reality is you can't undo that. What are you going to do? You could take off some inches. You could cut down here. You could go through all of these surgeries and change your anatomy, but it doesn't change where you started at all. So this whole process, I'm going to go ahead and close that whiteboard for those of you who were with me. I hope you got to see that. We'll see how that turns out in the recording. But that spectrum is incredibly important to consider. If you've got a very feminine man, you still have a man, and that's okay. The beauty is maybe they'll find a masculine woman and it'll be perfect. What a match. They just got to find each other. Or what we're going to end up talking about, because we're talking about gender, is what about sexuality? Well, let's do the gender dysphoria talk first. Gender dysphoria, I've got here my trusty little DSM, because as a therapist, I keep it pretty handy most of the time. It's a marked, this is how it reads. I'm going to go ahead and just give it to you as it reads. Gender dysphoria is a marked incongruence between one's experience, expressed gender, and assigned gender, which, by the way, we know that the DSM has not been a perfect book all along. The difference between the 3 and the 4 and the 4 and the 5, I mean, look, we're learning stuff. We're getting better. We're going to continue to get better. So there's going to be imperfections in here. This whole, it literally says in here, assigned gender. And then of at least 6 months in duration, as manifested by at least 2 of the following. And then it goes into some details. Now, why did I want to read that? Because the mental health world, unfortunately, in my opinion, has described it as assigned. It's assigned. It's assigned based on biology. Well, the mental health world, we're not medical professionals. We're mental health professionals. So the idea of it being assigned, that's being done by a medical person looking purely at biology. But we are in a position as mental health professionals that we have to work with the whole person, who they were, who they are, and who they want to be. And what that means is if they were born a male and they have decided that that is not really what they want to be, then as a therapist, I am obligated to challenge them, not to convince them otherwise, but to challenge the notion that they were that they are wanting to transition into being something that they were not born as, because what they're challenging is the biology there. So I challenge it, but I don't get to decide, well, let's do medication, let's do this procedure, because I'm not a medical person. So for me, it's much easier when I'm not looking at it from a medical standpoint of let's change your biology, to say, hold on, time out. What's going on here that makes you uncomfortable with who you are, not who you want to be? I'm all for, who you want to be, we'll figure that out. But what's making you uncomfortable with who you are? And this is where we enter gender dysphoria as a diagnostic. If a person has an incongruence between one's experienced and expressed gender and assigned gender, their biology, What we have here is a conflict between what is a reality, their biology, and what they want reality to be. That inherently is a distortion. It's like, it's similar to if we have somebody who says, I has an eating disorder. Let's say they're saying I'm fat, and you look at them and you're like, that's not reality. That's just not, I mean, clearly not reality. You know, their body fat is at like 2%. They're, you know, very unhealthy, and they still don't accept their body as it is, which is not fat. It's a distortion. Those distortions must be worked through for health reasons, for safety reasons, and in all reality, as we expand out from the individual, their family, their social rings, the culture, we should not, could not, are not supposed to accept realities that aren't reality, distortions, as though they are true. So can I affirm a person who says they were born the wrong gender? Depends on what you mean by affirm. There's this whole terminology going through in the mental health world of affirming care. Can I love a person who wants a different reality than they have? Heck, yes, I can. Have I worked with people who have struggled with wanting to be different than they are? All the time. Like, what I do is work with people who want things to be different, not just things, in some cases, their own identity work. They want to go in a different direction. But from a mental health standpoint, that starts with morals and structures in their life. It doesn't start with biology. So for mental health professionals to affirm, it's way out of our line of work. It should be. What we should do is what we would do with any client that presents wanting things to be different. We should love them and accept as they are, and then work through these distortions and see where that takes us. It's not up to me to decide if this distortion is something you want to cling to for your entire life. If you choose to do that, you have autonomy. You can choose to do that. And that means at some point, my goal is to make sure you're doing it knowing that there is a reality in spite of what you want reality to be. Okay, so let's just go into the gender dysphoria stuff just a tiny bit more. We talked about that marked incongruence between their experience and expressed gender. Let's see, we've got a strong desire to be rid of one's primary or secondary sex characteristics because of marked incongruence with their experienced and expressed gender. In other words, as they develop this idea that they can change, and they are encouraged in many cases to change and to make the biology fit their idea, as opposed to understanding that the biology is what the biology is, and you can still be very masculine or very feminine, and that's okay. Well, look, I haven't even addressed the next part of this. What about if your sexual preference is for the same gender? Ooh, hold on, time out. Same biological sex or same biological gender. They're not totally transferable, but for our purposes, I wanted to make sure that you understand that lingo is where people get hung up a lot. So if you have an attraction to somebody of the same gender, the same biological makeup, in other words, a male with a male, a female with a female, is that okay? Let's be real. It was not that long ago that was not acceptable as a form of love at all. The premise behind that was it goes against our biological design. Well, there's truth in that. In all reality, when we're talking about gender and human sexuality, the truth of the matter is there are big health risks to being sexual with somebody of the same gender at times. So in particular with males. And this is reality, whether you like it or don't like it. Females, because there's other things involved in their human sexual experience, the risks are actually much lower. But with males, it's much higher. And it's not because of the infections and diseases and stuff like that, although that does increase as well. It's also because the body was designed to have a certain type of sexual penetration, and anything that goes against that design can cause problems. So we end up, if you're dealing with men who have been with other men, or if you end up with women who have allowed or had intercourse in such a manner that things went in where they didn't belong biologically, we have major medical setbacks in some cases, sometimes massive, like really significant issues later on in life. And I'm not going to get into all the details of that because it's not super hard to figure out what those problems would be. You can do that if you would like. But I do want to emphasize that there are biological limitations at times, and that's one of them. So we covered the idea that gender is on a spectrum. I went ahead, and if you saw it on a video, you saw the spectrum drawn out. It was a really basic rudimentary spectrum. And there are also outliers on that spectrum. In other words, you've got your 99% that fit in this particular category, and then your 1%ers that are outside of that. And it doesn't make them less of a male or female. It just doesn't. It just means that they're an outlier, and that actually makes them unique. And I personally kind of like having people that are unique. That being said, when we covered that spectrum, it was for the purpose of talking about some of this therapeutic content. So I really want to address the question that came up in 2022. What is a woman and what is a man? The biological answer is very simple. It's based on what parts you have. Okay. So that's male, female. What's a woman? What's a man? Our culture in America, we have decided that we really want that to be up to the individual in a lot of cases. And I should say, most of our culture hasn't actually decided that, but there is a portion that has, and they're very, very loud. And so I want to address the question of what is a man. A man is obviously a person. That's a good start. Who was born with male parts and lives his life authentically in reality. And a woman would be a person with female parts who lives her life authentically in reality, not in the distortion. We lose our identity in the distortion. And that is not where we want people to live. Why? Because it's not healthy. Your depression symptoms go up. Your anxiety symptoms go up. Your suicide rate goes way up when you live in a non-reality, distorted place within your world. Now, can you have feelings? Absolutely. I'm not going to tell you what you feel. If you're a man and you have feelings for another man, okay. I mean, I'm not judging that. And the reality is there are limitations that are biological within that relationship without causing significant risk of potential harm. Okay. I mean, there's significant risk of potential harm in a relationship between a man and a woman at times. If a man has been sleeping with lots of people or a woman has been sleeping with lots of people, the risks go way up. We know that. It's a biological reality. Living in reality is what makes us men and women. Living in distortion is what's going to distract us from being men and women. I don't know if this is going to be helpful to some of you. I don't know if it's sparking more questions or concerns, but here's what I would like. This is my preference. I would like you to engage in the conversation. The only way for us to learn from one another is to talk to one another. So engage. Get on here and post things. Let me know what you're thinking. If I'm way, way off base, I want to know. All right. Just because I've studied this stuff does not mean that I get everything right. I won't get everything right. And I encourage you to participate in the conversation. What you're going to get from me, I'm not going to judge you. Not my place. Not my place. I'm going to point to reality and not reality. And if you find yourself in a non-reality space and you don't like that, you know what? I can be gentle and loving and caring. I can do all of those things and still point at when a person is not in reality. And you could do likewise for me. If you think I'm not living in reality, by all means, point it out. Do it like I'm doing it here. I hope I'm doing it here. I'm trying to do it here in a loving and gentle way, in a way that says, I can accept that you got some things to learn, and I'm going to see if I can help you understand it from my viewpoint. There you go. As a therapist, that's all I can ask for. Man, if we had more people doing that, we would make so much progress in topics like this, in things like gender dysphoria and biology and gender identity and the spectrum and what does it mean to be a woman and what does it mean to be a man. We would make so much progress, and it would happen quickly because, truthfully, most people want to live in reality. They don't want to try to create some false reality. Most people don't want that. They want a real reality. And there's other things that they want as well. So, hey, thanks for joining us. These topics of the year, I think I got a couple more for you, and then we're going to wrap up this year. I appreciate your time. Have a great one.